I really can't allow it, this devastation, this level of devastation to happen to anyone else. And for me, I'm doing it to honour my dad, but also I think of all those, really honest key workers who just turn up, do the job, and I'm doing it for them too.
And they were let down?
They were totally let down. I know my dad was totally let down, and that's why I really need to know, what happened behind the scenes. My name is Leshie Chandrapala, and I'm a spokesperson for COVID bereaved Families for Justice. And it is the day of the inquiry. It's the first hearing, and we're really hoping that this will be the beginning of, a journey of learning lessons and learning how to be better prepared for the next pandemic, if there is one.
And in honour of your father?
In honour of my father, my beautiful, beautiful father. So my dad, Ranjith Chandrapala, he was a London bus driver, and his route ran from Ealing Hospital to all through Ealing and Brent. And he was working during the lockdown because Boris Johnson asked, transport workers to keep the city moving. So he was very happy to work and get out there and, keep the city moving day to day. He took his work very seriously. He loved working as a bus driver. He loved his colleagues at the depot, and he was incredibly good at it as well. It's a really tough gig, being a bus driver. It's a difficult job. And he just he got sick at the peak of the first wave in April, and he deteriorated very quickly at home, and we got him into hospital, and he just passed away within days of being there. He was on a CPAP machine and ventilated, but COVID literally ravaged his organs, and I was able to see his body after he passed away, and I could tell that it had done something really awful to him. And it was just the worst day of my life, losing him.
And I think you're still struggling, aren't you?
Still struggling, 3 years on now, and still trying to keep together the threads of my life without him, and find meaning and purpose without him. He brought so much joy and light to so many people's lives, not just mine, but he was just the best person. I mean, he wasn't given any PPE to speak of, so he didn't have a mask, and his bus, there were no adjustments made at the time of his becoming sick. So I know that in March, certain measures were mandated, but I don't think they were all put into place until June. And I guess that's, where the inquiry comes in, and, where I want to know what happened between the Department for Transport, TfL, Mayor's Office, and bus operators like Metroline that my dad worked for, because it was so novel, and I just want to know, if it was so novel, where was the abundance of caution? We at home were worried, and we were trying to source masks, even though there was no mandate for masks until May 2020. Dad had already passed away by then. So if we were concerned back in April, why were his bosses not concerned? These guys get paid a lot of money to make, big decisions and keep their workforce safe. And there was no testing at that time either. I think testing was reserved for healthcare workers. And I remember Dad saying, so his route stopped at Neasden Tesco, and there was a massive car park. And back in April, I think they were testing healthcare workers, and he saw that, and he called and very sweetly said, "Oh, do you think if I just went and asked, they would, include me?" And I said, you could give it a try, Dad, you know. And these were bus drivers who were like, you know, just really in contact with the public. A lot of that workforce do come from BME, you know, our BME, and also there is a class element to it because they're all working class mostly. So all these inequalities, I think, led to them being forgotten, you know.
Do you really believe that?
I really believe that, you know, that they were an afterthought. And I really want to know from Grant Shapps what he was doing, you know. Was he coordinating on this? Was TfL coordinating on this? I want to see, you know, the correspondence between the Department for Transport and TfL and then the bus operators, you know. And if the bus operators were being told, you know, these are the measures that we want you to make, who was overseeing those measures? Because there were so many different operators working on different timelines, and that has not been looked into. So at Metroline, they had the largest number of deaths, and, you know, were they the slowest in putting into place those safety measures? And how much did that affect, you know, the death rate in, you know, at their depots? And also, I think not going into an early lockdown, you know, Boris Johnson missing those 5 Cobra meetings was detrimental to our, you know, death toll. And that's why it's so high, because in that first wave, we were seeing what was happening in Italy and Spain, but we were just sitting on our hands. Well, I wasn't, but the government was. And we know that Boris Johnson did not take it seriously. You know, he just, you know, allowed his flunkies to, like, you know, go off and, you know, do what they needed to do. But that's not what leadership is, really, not real leadership.
I mean, what is it that you hope that this inquiry will give you?
I have to keep hope, because this is the one shot that we have to learn those lessons and to really uncover what happened to people like my dad, you know, key workers, but also, you know, people in care homes and every single one of those 250,000 people that died. This is our chance. Now, the fear that I have is that call participants are not being included, and I don't think anonymisation of, you know, my story is going to help at all, help the inquiry.
Because you don't want your story anonymised.
I don't want my story anonymised. It's not helpful to me at all. It's not helpful to the memory of my dad. It's not a way of honouring my dad, you know, and his sacrifice of being at the front line and taking that danger, that risk, losing his life at the end of the day for a job which no one should have to do.
I mean, Baroness Hallett is adamant that she is putting the COVID bereaved at the centre of this inquiry, but you don't seem very convinced.
We were told, I went to the Terms of Reference meeting in London, and Dame Hallett, she promised to put bereaved voices at the centre of this inquiry, at the forefront and the centre of it. And that's not what's happening, you know, when it comes to us participating and giving our point of view.
But do you have overall confidence in the inquiry?
I do, and I still think that Dame Hallett really could listen to us and make a difference. And we're not being unfair, we're not being disproportionate. All of the 20 people, witnesses that were put forward from our group for this module, they were really relevant stories. I feel all the feelings, you know. I'm nervous, hopeful. There's solidarity coming together as well, and there's a chance to really reflect and really wish for a better future for everyone.
We contacted Metroline for comment on this interview. They said, "We were resolute in our commitment to protect our workforce, and we were one of the first bus companies to respond to the crisis by arranging the personal issue of hand sanitisers to all employees and sanitiser dispensers throughout our garages. The safety of all our employees was our priority. We immediately adhered to the guidance by the Department for Transport and Public Health England, providing all necessary PPE. We did everything we could as quickly as possible to make sure that whilst we were working to keep services running for critical workers, our employees were as protected and as safe as possible. In July 2020, Transport for London responded to UCL's independent review on bus driver deaths during the pandemic. TfL's Chief Safety, Health and Environment Officer, Lily Matson, said, "We've been devastated by the tragic deaths of our colleagues during this pandemic. We commissioned this independent study so we could urgently understand what more we can do to reduce the risk of others contracting coronavirus. It's clear that frontline workers across the country have disproportionately suffered from coronavirus, which is why we worked closely with all London bus operators to introduce measures to help keep the capital's drivers safe."